100% today. Yes. And
All right, sorry for the delay. For the past 3 years, I've literally been in 1424 every semester, and Dr. Caden decided to mix it up this semester, but together we will defeat her. All right. Yeah, it was just as chaos. I've been in this classroom before. I teach seminar usually in this classroom, so it wasn't that bad a setup, but I was just all out of sorts and really flustered. Before we get started, a quick announcement to start the beginning semesters. For those of you who are going to be here for beyond this semester, you might consider applying for the MOCPA Foundation scholarships. They've got about $40,000 in scholarships, and they're about $500 to $1,000 each. Or they are $500 or $1,000, one of the two. If you're interested in applying for those, this is a good opportunity since everybody in the stream is doing kind of materials. So I don't think I've had anybody auditing, just did it for the love of auditing. So, consider applying for that as an opportunity. All right. Welcome back. I hope you all had a good break. I did not have a good break. It started out good. It was very fun. I actually got this course entirely prepped. Like I've got like 98% of the course done, so which is good since I've been teaching it for 10 years. I probably should know what I'm doing. But I was really excited, and then I went home to see my family, which that was good up until Christmas Day. And for those of you who remember spring, I was complaining about what happened over Christmas and spring. So I know a lot of you had me in AIS for spring last semester. My mother was in the hospital for 3 days at Christmas. Well, she dodged Christmas and then fell down on Christmas Day, and we had to take her to the hospital the next day. But this one was even more dramatic because she got COVID and then gave it to everybody in the family. So I'm recovering from COVID. I'm not infectious. I don't have any symptoms other than a cough that's lingering. The reason I mention this is you might hear me cough. You might hear my voice go catch a little bit. I have not been practicing talking for long periods of time. I did okay this morning, so we'll see what happens today. But yeah, it's been an interesting few weeks, and so I'm also a little bit behind on my other classes, but thankfully we're up to date on this one. So this is auditing, the famed auditing that I talked about so much in AIS, and we're going to be talking a lot today about what's going to be going on in this course. So a few pieces of information that I want to share. First of all, my office hours are a little bit different this semester than what they've been in the past. This is a weird schedule for me. So I usually teach on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. When I took over forensics, that was a Tuesday, Thursday class. Last spring, it wasn't a big deal because I was just teaching everything. Like basically every class that Truman had, I taught everything. But what it felt like anyway. And this year we've actually got a new AIS instructor, Professor Greiner. You met him. Wonderful guy. He's taken over AIS this spring. He's completely terrified. So I'm not teaching AIS, and so I've got a big gap between my seminar and auditing class in the morning and this class in the afternoons. And I'm ever present in the afternoons at 1:30 here. So that's when my office hours will generally be. That does not mean I won't be on campus on Tuesday or Thursday, because I'm teaching on Tuesdays, Thursdays, unless it's during class, which is 12 to 1:30. I will usually be in my office. Even if I'm not in my office, you are welcome to reach out and come talk to me. And send me an email and set up a Zoom call, whatever it may be. Office hours are just kind of a placeholder for when you know I should be in my office. I even say that there may be some days that I set office hours schedule that I'm not there simply because of having meetings and stuff like that, but I'll try to let you know. Generally, this is the guideline of when it's the best time to catch me in the office, but not the only time. As far as the materials for this course, I want to make sure that we are clear on this. So this always is some interesting discussion to have. So we are using Auditing and Assurance Services, a systematic approach, which is the 2025 release. It is a new version of a very old book. This book was originally written in the 1990s. Now, you're going to hear me make a lot of fun of this book. I want to clarify that I have a high opinion of the materials in this book. It's not that I think that this is a bad textbook. It's just some of the stuff is a little bit outdated and has not been updated properly. 90% of the stuff is really, really good, and then there's 10%, which is kind of meh. I do want to make sure that we're aware that anything that comes in this class is going to be my authority first and the textbook after that. So if you see something that's contradictory, which we will see some things, you should always rely on what I'm going to say. That being said, it's a good textbook. It's not terribly expensive. There's a lot of different ways you can get us access to this. I'm going to go ahead and say this once, and it's recorded, so I probably get in a lot of trouble for saying this recorded, but I'm going to do it anyway to clarify, okay? The question always comes up, do we need Connect for this course? The answer depends on your perspective, okay? We will not be doing any assignments or any work in Connect, okay? But we will be using materials that are external materials to McGraw-Hill. So technically speaking, if you're a legitimate law-abiding individual, you should have Connect as part of your subscription, even though we're not going to be using Connect. That being said, I will provide all materials on Brightspace. Okay, so if you don't want to buy Connect, I'm not going to judge. Okay, I'm not going to judge whether you buy Connect. It's not my job to evaluate your ethics. That's a personal thing for you. Okay? Now, if you are okay with that, then you can just buy the textbook, and that's all. You will need the 12th edition though, because there are some differences in content. If you go back to or not 12th edition, 2025 edition, the 12th edition was the previous version. If you get the 12th edition, you will notice there are differences between the homework assignments that we will be doing in class and what you have. So even though it might be good to go back and get a used copy because it's cheaper, you do need the current updated edition because there are some differences between editions. But other than that, that's basically what you will need. We were not going to be using, like I said, we're not going to be using Connect specifically, but I have created a section if you want to sign in so that you have Connect access. That will give you access to the ebook as well as the Connect tools like algorithmic learning exercises and files that you want to download externally. Most of the files, or I shouldn't say all the files that you will need for this course, absolutely need will be on Brightspace, but you still can have access to Connect stuff that's supplemental to that. Obviously, if you are not going to be here in class, you want to be able to access the Zoom. This becomes increasingly common during January and February that I have to cancel class. And back in the day, back in 2019, which I was reflecting back on that with my previous students, that we just canceled class. It was just no class at all. Now, if we cancel class, we all just attend via Zoom, which isn't the progress great? You know, canceled classes don't exist anymore. Yeah, so we will still be having classes via Zoom because I have a schedule that I like to keep, but we'll talk a little bit about the schedule here. I post everything to YouTube. You should be familiar with that by now from the AIS class, but my channel link is access here. And then you'll need to have online access for obviously Brightspace materials to be posted. And I want to put this one up because this is becoming a problem. I don't know why. I mean, this is the most connected generation of any, like your generation is more connected to anyone else. And yet somehow I still get problems with reaching out to students via email. I had one I don't think it was a student. I think it was well, not one of my students, but a student here at Truman State that I reached out to for an external reason. They did not respond to me until 3 weeks later. So I didn't see your email. Like, you didn't check it for 3 weeks. You do need to check your email on a consistent basis, a regular basis. I would say daily, get into the habit of doing that. Even if you don't like email, you're likely going to have to be responsible for email and the job that you go to in the real world. So get the habit of doing that. I'm not going to send you emails every day, but I will send you emails occasionally. I think it would expect it. So please get the habit. All right, course description, it's auditing. There's a lot of learning objectives here. Trust me when I say there is a lot of content and we will cover it all in detail. It is very, very dense. Whereas I do personally prefer active learning environments like we did in AIS, where we did a lot of hands-on work. This is a very heavy lecture-based course, okay? I do try to keep it upbeat. I do try to keep the pace going. I try to make sure that it's interesting, but it can drag a little bit just because of the volume of content. This is basically the only auditing course that you're going to get undergraduate. If you go to the graduate program, there's a graduate course, which is a little bit more hands-on. But I've basically been handed the CPA exam guidelines to you and told, teach this. I'm like, all right, okay. So it's a very, very big pile of stuff, and there's a lot to go through. I will give you context for what I think is the most important detail, but there's a lot of it. Right? There's just no way of avoiding that. As with all courses, you can expect to spend time out of class, outside of class with this. I tend to think that I'm a little bit more lenient on the lenient side with respect to the time that you spend outside of class, but it really varies. It depends upon what's going to be happening during a given week. During exam weeks, you probably can expect to be spending more time working on this class than non-exam weeks. And by the way, I just want to clarify, if there's an exam in this class that conflicts with an exam in another class, we don't do that deliberately, okay? Dr. Cade and I don't get together and say, let's see if we can schedule exams that just completely and totally conflict with the student schedules. So I want you to know that's not intentional, just what happens. But yeah, during exam weeks may be busier. During the Excel assignment week, you may have a lot of work to do. But for the most part, I would say it's going to be on the low end of the 6 to 9 additional hours per week. Okay. That being said, there is a lot of content here. There's a lot of work, and we're going to spend a lot of time going through it. As far as the class format goes, this is my only like true lecture class, I call it. So it's a pretty straightforward class format. We do have some interaction points, but they are going to be somewhat minimal and they're very front loaded. So when I say interaction, that's where we're going to be talking back and forth. Mostly it's going to be me up here speaking. And this is the class that takes a toll on my voice because I do a lot of talking. And as you all know, I talk really fast. So there's that too. But I do a lot of talking in the class to cover the content, and it's a pretty frenetic pace. We will have some points where there's some interaction. I do not believe in the Socratic method. Has anybody heard the term Socratic method before? We have some old teachers that really believe that and say, I'm just going to cold call it at students and put them in a spotlight. I don't believe on that. And that if you don't want to be involved in the class discussion, that's completely up to you. I encourage you to ask questions though, and make comments when you feel appropriate. For the most part though, that's not required in this course. With one exception, I will have one activity in a few weeks where everybody in the class will have to contribute something. That is my one contribution to the Socratic method, but we'll get to that a little bit later. It's pretty straightforward. Overall, basically, it's going to be first 2 days of the week, I'm going to be talking, and then the Friday, we're going to be going over homework. Does everybody remember the homework reviews back from AIS? It's very similar to that, but a lot more intense. The homework is a lot more subjective and is a lot more rigorous as far as the content goes. So we dedicate pretty much an entire day to every homework assignment to review it. As with everything in my courses, the homework is based on completion. That being said, I do have some criteria that I want to go through on that because it is a little bit different than the way that I approach it in my courses. With that being said, the homework is more rigorous. It will take you a substantial amount more time. So I want to make sure that we're clear on that. All right. So as far as the notes that we're going to be going for, I want to talk a little bit about substantive interaction. So substantive interaction is something that we have to make sure that everybody's involved. I haven't done a count of the number of students. I'm trying to do that really quickly. So I think I count 18. There's 19 enrolled, of course. Anyway, if I'm missing one, I could be miscounting. But my expectation is that you'll be here for the first week, and if you're not, then we're going to notify and drop you. I don't know who's missing right now off the top of my head, but I could have been missing something. Basically, substantive interaction for this course is just basically going to be the first assignment, which is due on Friday. All right. Actually, technically, there's 2 assignments due on Friday, but we'll get to that. So the first assignment due on Friday, if you submit that, then I'm going to say, all right, you're interacting with the course, we're good to go. Other than that, I'm going to question and say, are you still involved in the course? Are you still enrolled? All right, as far as the homework goes, there's a big detailed guideline of the homework or schedule of the homework in the back. So you're going to expect it to make sure you do the reading assignments or the reading materials before class. To be honest, you probably heard me say this before. I'm not big on detailed reading. I do think that the book is very valuable, but I don't think that you should make a habit of going in and reading the word for word book or word for word before the discussions. Part of the reason why is because I cover content at a fairly specific level in the lectures. So the things that I cover in the lectures are the things that I think you want you to know the most about. If you're confused after listening to my lecture and you want to know more about the detail, that's when you should follow up with the book. Okay. Some of the things that are in the book, I will not cover in the class, and I will not expect you to know. But you can use that judgment if you want to read the entire chapter beforehand. So if you feel comfortable with that approach, that's fine. But if I do assign you something to read, I expect you to read it. If I don't assign it, then it's not something that's required for the course. As far as basically assignments that we're going to be completing, there's going to be several different contexts of assignments. The ones that are absolutely required are going to be your regular homework assignments. These will usually be due on a weekly basis and usually on Fridays. It's not always going to be Fridays, but that schedule just depends on what the week looks like. So the Fridays basically are going to be me giving you an assignment, you completing the assignment, submitting on a Brightspace, and us having our discussion. There's a few other assignments that kind of fall under this area. There's going to be for Chapter 4 an in-class activity that I always do. I like to think it's fun, but it could be just students are humoring me when they say it's fun. We'll be doing that, and that will be worth some points as well. For the homework assignments, like I said, it's completion rather than accuracy. This is the rub, though, and this is really important. And I'm going to spend some time talking about this because I think it's really critical. So one thing that's really, really important to note about auditing, it is very, very subjective. Okay. Unlike other accounting courses where you always have an objective answer, this is one of those ones that it's basically what is the best answer. You're going to see a lot of questions that are going to say, what is the most likely or what is the best response or something along those lines, meaning that there are possible correct answers that are not the best correct answer, which is really, really frustrating to a lot of students. A lot of students really struggle with that, and I get that. To address that, we need to get into the habit of thinking about these questions in a lot more depth than just circling the response. So this is an important part, and this is the one you should make sure you pay close attention to and take note on. When we're doing the homework assignment, you will only have somewhere between 8 to 10 multiple choice questions. When you answer a multiple choice question, your first thing is to circle the correct answer. Your second step is going to be to write below that why you answered that question. Usually it's going to be 2 to 3 sentences explaining the reason for your answer. Does that sound tedious? Yes, it's absolutely extremely tedious, okay? Do I think that it improves people's understanding of the content? I actually have measurable evidence that it does, all right? Now, that being said, when I first did this, I had my students write responses for every single one of the multiple choice questions. So not only did they have to justify the correct answer, they had to eliminate the incorrect answers. If you feel like doing that, that's fine. I backed out on that because I got a lot of complaints about the amount of volume of work with that. All I really require now is that you justify your correct answers now, okay? So that's something that takes a little bit of adjustment and get used to because most students, when they do multiple choice questions, it's just circle, move on, okay? This is going to be a lot more intense and rigorous process. And the whole goal is to get you to think about what it is you're answering and why you're answering those questions. And it is a measurable improvement. Prior to doing this, my test averages, the multiple choice were about 60% average correct. After doing this, it jumped to 80%, which is a statistically significant deviation. I have proof of that. Yeah. I do want to make a note of this, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. One thing that's become increasingly apparent to me in recent years is the reliance on AI tools. Much like all of the courses that I teach, this is a green light course, and you can use AI tools to help you out with this. Be very, very careful about your use of AI tools because if you just copy and paste what the AI tool gives you, you're not really learning the content for yourself, okay? So I do think it's appropriate to use it, especially if you're really struggling with a particular question and how to justify your answer. That being said, you do need to be careful about that. And I will have some more to say about that when we get to the section on AI. But if you decide to use AI to help you, then you want to make sure that you still are confident with your answer and you understand why that answer is correct. If you just copy and paste what the AI tool says and don't really pay attention to what it says, you're gonna have a bad time on the exam, and that's the real problem. Okay, that's the real problem right there. We'll have some discussions. We will have discussions on chapters 3, 5, and 6. Basically, these discussions are kind of my way of assigning homework without giving you all any credit. So that's just me being abusive. It's actually kind of high-level topics. So we're going to talk about engagement, acceptance, and completion next week. And basically, what this means is that you will have an assignment that you will be responsible for coming into class having completed. There will be no deliverable for the assignment, but I expect you to be able to talk and respond favorably to the questions that I will pose to you. So if you go online, you can find the chapter 3 discussion, and it will show you what there is. There is no need to upload anything. This always comes up. Somebody says, Dr. Barnes, do I need to upload anything? No. For the discussions, there's no upload. There's no requirement. I just want you to complete the assignment and be ready to talk about it when we talk about it next week. Okay. So there's a few of those in the class. They're not worth any points except for the chapter 4 one, which I mentioned already, but I'll get to that one. Chapter 4, that one's going to be a surprise. Everything else, you're just going to come in, you're going to be prepared to discuss. Okay. Idea assignments. So IDEA is a data analytics tool. It's actually a computer assisted auditing tool. It's what I used when I worked at KPMG. And when I say that, I always feel like I'm doing like my back in my day type thing. But I'm a real big fan of data analytics tools. I think IDEA is a little bit dated, but there's one nice thing about it. It's free with this book. So I do think there's some value to it. These are going to be additional assignments that are going to stress how we use data analytics in auditing, okay? And these usually are going to be accompanying the homework assignments. They're additional assignments in addition to what you're going to be doing. You can kind of see the listing of assignments here. All of the information about how to complete the idea assignments on Brightspace. Basically what you'll do is for the first few assignments, you'll complete some tutorial exercises, and then you'll walk through some basic exercises in IDEA, and you'll make a submission. Now, the interesting thing about this is that last year I had to basically rescind all of the idea assignments because the technology wasn't working. And so I was a little bit worried and antsy about that this year. So I made a decision about how I was going to approach this. So you will notice on the syllabus, the only thing that's highlighted in yellow, I do think that these are important activities to address, but I also am aware that people may struggle with technology, particularly if the technology is being combated against them. So the idea assignments are completely and totally optional to you. All right. If you would like to complete them, you may. If you do not want to complete them, you will not. The reason I'm mentioning this is the way that I've decided to design the grade curve in this class is that it is much more difficult to get a good grade if you do not have the requisite points. And this is worth 60 points in the class, which is a measurable portion of the class. Now, I'm not saying you will lose 60 points. Basically, I think the number of points in the class is like 530 something, maybe around 500 something. I can tell you right now. Yeah, 505 points, okay? If you're dividing your grade by 505 points, it's much easier to get a better grade than if you're dividing it by 445 points, all right? You have much less room for error. As evidence of this, the people who got A's last semester all completed the idea assignments in the class. Anybody who did not complete the idea assignments in my class last semester did not get an A in the class. Okay? I don't think I'm spoiling any information. I told them that I thought it was a good idea to complete the idea assignments. That's anecdotal evidence that if you do complete the idea assignments, you have a much better shot at an A. It's not going to guarantee you an A. It's just going to be a larger base of points. So I encourage you to do so. I also want to make a note here that you may look at the first few idea assignments and this is a lot of work. The first few assignments do include a lot of work. It gets much, much easier later on. So if you are bound and determined to do this, don't give up after the first few assignments. The last few assignments only take like 15 to 30 minutes each once you get through the first few assignments. The first few assignments do take some time though. And the chapter 8, chapter 9 assignment, you will notice that I've got that kind of noted here, chapter 8 and chapter 9. That one is about 1 to 2 hours, but it's also worth 10 points instead of being worth 5 points. So completely, totally up to you. If you do not think it's worth your time, if you're not interested in data analytics, that's fine. I just want to caution you that it is much more difficult to get a better grade in the class if you don't complete the assignment. So, and I do think it's worthwhile, especially since you can put that on your resume. I've got some experience with IDEA. So, but other than that, we'll not be talking about those specifically in class. It's just an idea assignment to kind of supplement, or an additional assignment to supplement what we'll be doing. All right, the Excel assignment, we've got an assignment in Excel this semester because we do have Excel reinforcement all across our accounting program. So you're going to be preparing a preliminary financial analytical procedure. And you may ask what that is. The answer is I can't really address that yet because we haven't talked about analytical procedures. But this is something that I did when I was at KPMG. It was called Forensic in the Audit. And we basically did audit supports and compared these big spreadsheets that kind of did financial analysis. There is an example online. It's currently still in operation about who's going to be assigned to what companies because at the beginning of the semester, I have my PTRA go through and make sure all the companies are in Morningstar. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to be taking 2 companies. You're going to be downloading their data from Morningstar, which is the income statement and balance sheets, and you're going to be preparing some analyses based on this information. Some of it's going to be cleanup, some of it's going to be analysis, but it's worth 20 points. I do want to caution you that this is not a difficult assignment. It is a time-consuming assignment, okay? So I'm going to try to remind you consistently throughout the semester to keep an eye on this. If you wait till the day of the assignment and try to do it before class in this, you're going to have a bad time with that, okay? I can tell you specifically that I had some students that tried to do that. They did not do well. And this is one of those ones that's really important to make sure you get a good grade on for reasons that we'll talk about here in just a second. All right, professional interactions. This is just like an AIS. There's some events that are going to be attending. We already have 2 executive and resident visits scheduled, one for January 20th, one for April 9th. Those are greenlit, but any professional interaction that you take part in can be qualified for this. Same criteria as back in AIS. 1 paragraph about what the presentation is about, 1 paragraph about what you learned. That's it. Pretty straightforward, easy 10 points. There are 3 exams in this course. The exams are a little bit weird. They're out of 60 points, which I have to remind everybody after the first exam because somebody looks and sees 54 and they're like, what did I do wrong? You know, 54 is a good grade on one of those exams. So yeah, so 3 points up 60, sorry, 3 exams, 60 points each. They are going to cover the most immediate content. That being said, this is one of those courses that you can't just jettison content once we cover it. The stuff we're going to be covering in the first 5 chapters is going to be relevant for the rest of the course. And same is going to be true for the stuff that we'll cover in the chapters after that. It does we do kind of lean back a little bit and not cover stuff specifically in the second exam, but the third exam, everything is on the table, and we're going to have to make sure that we know it all. So it's not comprehensive by requirement, but it's comprehensive by nature is basically what I'm telling you. My study guides get increasingly lengthy as I go through it. In fact, all the study guides are posted, and you're going to notice that in the second study guide that I've got a summary of all the stuff from the first exam that you have to cover. And there's 2 pages of that in the second or the third exam, stuff from the first exam and the second exam. So it's important to note that there's a lot of detail associated with that. The exams, generally speaking, the first exam is pretty straightforward. It's usually about a 75% average in the class. Second exam, for some reason, there's usually a drop-off. I think it's just a semester fatigue, but that's usually more challenging than the third exam. While being the most difficult of the exams, students tend to do really, really well, and that's my story for that. I will try to remind you of that to try to keep your vigor and your energy up. So if you just keep in mind. That being said, there's variance in performance on the exam. I've had students who have done very, very well in the first exam that have dropped off, which is always unfortunate. But more likely is I've had students who struggled on the first exam and still came back and did well in the class. My favorite example was about 6 years ago. I had a student that scored a 14% on the first exam, still managed to come back and get a B in the class. Okay, so it was pretty impressive. The student was very despondent, and so that was kind of one of those things that we had to reevaluate with our approach to the course. All right. It's important to note that this is a qualitative course, so the exam questions will be qualitative in nature. When I say qualitative, I'm referring to subjective. You're going to see a lot of questions that are going to be very, very difficult to kind of suss out what is the correct answer. I will try to give more objective answers when possible, but for the most part, it's very difficult in this course because you do have to be able to measure and evaluate and use professional judgment. Our first exam is going to be coming up on February 11th, and then we've got one in March, and then one in April, and then we have our final exam. And so you probably are guessing this because most of you are familiar with this from the final exams. Everybody remember AIS, the final exam? Remember how difficult that was? Most of you don't have any idea because you didn't take the final exam. Same is true here, okay? If you meet all the criteria in this class, you can opt out of the final exam, okay? So this requires full completion of all homework assignments, so you need to get full credit of that. This does not include the ID assignments. If you don't want to do the ID assignments, those are exempt. That's fine. 15 out of 20 on the Excel assignment. Remember, I said you want to get a good grade in Excel. This is the one thing I will not move on. I will not budge. If you do not get a 15 out of 20 on this, you will be joining me for finals week, okay? And you can ask the people who've gotten 14 out of 20 and just basically had to spend finals week with me. It may be rude for me to say that, but I do think that this is important to devote sufficient time, so please make sure you consider that. Completion of the professional interaction, 40 out of 50 on the group presentation. That's the end of the project presentation. That's usually pretty much a given. I don't think I've ever given less than a 40 out of 50 to anybody, just true students are really good at presentations. Group presentation summaries, and completion of all extra in-class and extra credit opportunities offered, and no unexcused absences. That's another one that's I'm pretty diligent about. Yeah, I don't have any unexcused absences. By the way, you're wondering, is there an extra credit opportunity? There is a good one. It's worth 10 points. It's VITA volunteering, okay? So if you're planning on volunteering for VITA, good news, you're already getting an extra benefit out of that. If you're not planning for volunteering for VITA, you know what you should do? Volunteer for VITA, okay? So that's one of the things. If you're in a situation where you cannot make that practically work, first of all, I know the VITA GTRAs, and even if you can't attend during one of the weekends, they can try to find something that you can help contribute with. But if you just absolutely can't, there is no way to make it work. I know that happens a lot with student athletes who are involved. Instead, come talk to me. We can work out an additional or alternative arrangement, but only if there's no other possibility. That I do think it's really important to get involved with VITA and be a participant. As a matter of fact, I've actually verbally volunteered that I'm going to do VITA this year, which will be my first time to participate in VITA. So you may get to work with me. Who knows? You'll see how bad I really am at taxes. All right. So as far as the final exam goes, basically, this is a little bit different since there's 3 exams versus 2 exams. I take the average of your 2 highest exams in this course, okay? So the final exam is worth 100 points, and I will take the average, a percentage average of your 2 highest exams. So this is kind of a note. If you do poorly on one exam, it's not necessarily the end of the world because you do have an opportunity to get higher scores on the other exams. And that's been a saving grace for a lot of students in the past. I will say it's just easier to do well on all the exams. That's the best policy. Okay. But if you struggle on one of the exams, you wouldn't be the only person in this class, in this course to ever do that. It can be challenging. So keep that in mind, is that I will do the average of the highest two exams, of course. Group presentations. This is one of the ones I'm less certain about, but I'm going to continue doing. I've been trying to get away from group presentations for the most part in my classes. I still haven't really found a good alternative for that in this course, so we're going to continue to do it. I do think there's some important topics here. So we're not going to cover everything related to auditing in this course. You're not going to believe me when I say that because of the volume stuff we're going to cover, but there's a lot of stuff that we're not going to cover. So I've given these topics that I think are some relevant topic areas with respect to auditing that we will not talk about, to an opportunity to talk about in these group presentations. So 19 people in the class. I think we're going to do 4 presentations, 4 groups. So it'll be groups of 5 and 4 people. So I guess that would be 1 group of 4 and 3 groups of 5. Those would take place on the last 2 class sessions of the semester. So basically, we'll do 2 presentations per day, and it'll be first come, first serve on the presentation topics. We don't need to worry too much about that right now as far as that goes, because it's a long ways away. But if you do have people in the class that you'd like to present with, first of all, make sure you ask them, do you want to be in a group with me? Okay, don't just blurt out, say, I'm in a group with this person. That did actually happen, where I had one student that was actually selected to be in 3 different groups. And it was a really, really awkward scenario when she had to choose which group she was in. So it was a long time ago, though. I got a lot better about making sure I specified that. So reach out to those people. Again, if you don't have a full group, if you only have like 2 or 3 people that you want to be in a group with, I can make the arrangements. If you have no preference of group participation whatsoever, I will find a group for you. So we'll talk more about that, but that'll be the case. It's going to be 50 points. 50 points is generally pretty reasonable performance on this. I think they averaged like around the 47, 48 points on the presentations last semester. Like I said, sure the students do really well on this. Their soft skills are very, very strong. So I don't anticipate any problems with this one. As before, I'll talk about this more when we get in. During the last week, if you're out there on the final exam, you'll be required to take presentation summaries of these presentations. This is mostly just to make sure that people are paying attention to the presentations. I had an unfortunate incident several years ago where basically all the students were tuned out whenever the groups are giving the presentations. And so I said, oh, we're going to stop that right now. The presentation summaries are just to make sure everybody's engaged with that. So we'll get to that. Subjective assessment, about 5% of your grade is going to be up to my judge. This is not to penalize anybody. I don't use this as kind of a punitive tool. Just kind of the extra points for doing well in the class. 90 to 95% of the students usually get 30 out of 30 on this. Okay. If you do miss points on this, it's because you miss assignments and you don't inform you that you're going to miss assignments. Or the big no-no is missing a class session, okay? If you miss a class session and don't tell me about it. Now, if you notify me in advance, I think my policy is in here, but you all know my policy. If you notify me in advance, basically all sins are forgiven, okay? It's only if you don't notify me in advance that we have a problem, okay? I don't particularly care what the reason is. If you're like, I'm going to a baseball game, Dr. Actually, don't tell me that, okay? Don't tell me that you're going to a baseball game, because it's like, oh, I see we know it's more valuable. But if you're adults now, if you make the decision to miss class, you just have to tell me that you're going to miss class, and I'm going to say, okay, it's your decision to make. You're still responsible for the content we cover in class, but it's your decision to miss. That being said, if you basically decide you're going to attend all of the Cardinals home games and you're going to miss like 17, 18 classes, I will have a conversation with you about that. I do expect you to be in class, but you do not need to give me context for that. And the reason I mention that is sometimes people are a little bit too graphic with their descriptions about why they're not going to make class, especially some illnesses. The digestive illness descriptions get a little bit out of hand. Okay. And so, yeah, if you're ill, I first of all, I'll give you my pity, but you don't need to give me a description. Okay. Make sure you communicate with me about any issues that you're having in the course, if you're falling behind on work. Generally, I will forgive any sins as long as you're proactive and communicating with me. Transparency is really important in accounting, and it's really important in this course. So please make sure you keep that in mind. Here's the grading. It's got 505 points. This is a tentative grade. I'm not 100% sure this will be correct, but we'll see what happens. As far as participation and attendance goes, I do like people to be here in person and attendance. I know that we're still kind of on the lingering COVID attend from Zoom situation, and a lot of people got used to that. I think it's very, very difficult, particularly in this course, be engaged in the class when you're listening to something over Zoom. So if you force yourself to be here, I know that I'm not the most fun person to be around. I mean, I'm probably like, like top 30%, but maybe not the most fun person to be around. If you make an effort to be here, I think it'll be much more engaging to be able to be active. I also think participation to some degree is important. It's not required that you come to class, ask questions, but I do think that you should be thinking about questions to ask. I'm really, really ADD. I have a problem with attention deficit disorder. So the way that I get around that is I try to, whenever I'm listening to somebody present, I think, what types of questions do I have about this? And I try to actively think about questions, even if I never intend on asking them. So that's kind of my hack to be able to pay attention to things. Trust me when I say some of this stuff gets really, really deep. It gets really, really thick. It's very, very difficult to grasp onto. You're going to think it's going to be very, very messy when we get to the control stuff. It's going to get worse once we get to the business process stuff. Okay. So it will require a Herculean effort, especially late spring when it actually gets warm in this class and everybody's just kind of like, it's so nice outside. And you just had lunch. Yeah, there's actually a story. One of my former students, he did really well. He aced a couple of exams in the class, but his routine during the spring was basically whenever he got tired, his just eyes would shut down for like 10 seconds and he'd take a micro nap and then he'd pop back open. Okay, like he didn't miss anything. And I still give him grief to that to this day. So it does happen even with the best of students. It's going to happen that you're going to drift off. If you can pay attention to 100% of the words that I say in this class, you are a superhuman individual. Okay, I don't expect that though. If you cannot, like I said, if you cannot attend a class in person, please let me know in advance of class. I understand that situations do happen. Like if you're on the way to class and your car breaks down, I'm going to forgive you for that. But for the most part, I do expect you to let me know before a class takes place that you will not be here. Academic integrity. This shouldn't come up, but I do want to make a clarification on this. You can work together in class. In fact, I encourage you to do so, especially if you're close to anybody in the class. This is really, really difficult topic area, and so you can work together to come up with good answers. But all work that you do does need to be your own, and you do need to present that work as your own. Okay. Course policy on artificial intelligence. This is something that's increasingly an issue, and I want to make sure. Like I said before, this is a green light course. You are welcome to use AI tools to whatever degree you want to use. If you use an AI tool in any capacity, you do have to tell me that you're using an AI tool. All right. When this comes up, this is likely going to come up on the homework. If you answer a question using an AI tool, you have to tell me somewhere on the assignment that you used that AI tool. So specify what AI tool you used and what capacity. I'm not going to count off points if you use an AI tool. In fact, I encourage you to do it if you're struggling because this is really, really dense content. But I do not want you to claiming that work as your own. Okay. If you do not use an AI tool and you give me good answers, that's perfectly fine. If you use an AI tool and give me a good answer, and then I look and see answers on the exam are completely, totally inconsistent with what your answers were on the homework, I'm going to question whether or not you were actually answering those questions yourself. Okay. So that's why I want to make sure we're clear on that. You do not need to specify every single instance in use of AI. If like you use it for a homework assignment, you don't need to just tell me every single question you use AI on, but I do expect some disclaimer within the assignment itself. Okay. If you do that, if you fail to do that, if you use an AI tool and you fail to disclose it and I find out about it, that is academic misconduct. Okay. That's cheating in the course and I will treat it as appropriate. So please don't make me do that. I've treated everything up until this point as basically saying it's just an oversight. I'm being very, very specific now. Please don't do that moving forward because that will be considered plagiarism or as cheating if you do that without giving proper credit where credit's due. Rest of the information is pretty straightforward because we've seen this before. If you have disability issues, come talk to me. We can set up special testing arrangements. Extra credit we've talked about. VITA is going to be that. It's going to be worth 10 points, which is a substantial amount of credit for this. I up the ante whenever it's in the spring because I do know that VITA is a pretty substantial commitment, but I do think it's a worthwhile one. Course content, course conduct. We all know my policies on this. So understanding and effort, please make sure that you demonstrate both to me to the best of your ability. I will forgive a lot if it seems like you're making a diligent effort to try to do well in the class. I have had students who have basically gotten better grades simply because they showed me that they were willing to work, and I basically took them to task on that. And if you have problems, feel free to come talk to me in my office. It's amazing how empty that place is most of the time, empty with the exception of me. Yeah. So I have 10 hours of office hours that I'm sanctioned to do as Truman State. I probably spend maybe less than one a week on average talking with students about assignments. I'm more than happy to talk about anything that you're struggling with. If I'm talking too quickly, tell me to slow down. I get really excited about some of the stuff in auditing. Once we start talking about assertions, I'm going to be going a mile a minute. So tell me to slow down if you're missing something. That's completely fine. I'm not going to be offended. In fact, I expect it to happen. I do think that it's fine to have fun in the class, but we do need to be professional towards one another and know where to draw the line. That being said, professionalism kind of is reinforced when we talk about email communication. When we communicating via email, I don't think that I deserve respect via email, but I do think it's important to demonstrate that you have got good email etiquette. So if you're communicating with me, make sure you say Dr. Barnes or Professor, or you can even call me Michael if you really like. That is my name. But to make sure you send that. Use proper sentence grammatical structure, have a sign off that's appropriate for that. I will do the same thing for you for every single email. Okay. You can use an occasional emoji as long as it's accompanied by those things, but don't just give me a thumbs up as a response. Okay. I might give you a different finger if that's the case. So yeah, I won't do that. I won't do this. All right. Keep in mind that the work that we're doing is a combination of the work over the course of the semester. It breaks my heart when somebody does really, really well for the first 2/3 of the semester, and then has a letdown the last third of the semester and drops their letter grade by 1 or 2 spaces. I'm going to judge you on the entire semester, not on parts of the semester. And the reason I'm so insistent on this is I was really bad when I was in high school and college about doing work for really good work for a really short period of time and then letting down and then trying to recover. I'm going to give you the notification right now. Please don't have that recovery time. I will be sympathetic, but that doesn't mean I'm going to change your grade. Okay. So to make sure you're consistent. This probably won't come up, but if there's something in the syllabus or something that's not covered in the syllabus and you're not certain about how to address it, talk to this guy. Okay. Don't try to make the judgment yourself. I encourage you all to use professional judgment throughout this course, with the exception of course policies. That's going to be my judgment that should be used in that situation. All right. We got some boilerplate stuff that you can review too on your own. I do want to make a note here that if you have any problems, your first point of contact, if you have any problems with me, like say, for example, that you think I'm doing cyberbullying or something like that. Sorry, that joke will never get old. But if you do have a legitimate problem with me, you can reach out to Dr. Caden, the reporter to you, report me to her. If you are not comfortable with talking to me, I would first of all say that hopefully everybody is comfortable enough talking to me, because I've had you for a class before. I know you all. But if you're not comfortable with that, you can reach out to Dr. Caden. If you're having problems at a larger level, our interim dean is now Dr. Eric Dixon. He's going to be here for the spring semester. Reach out to him in the dean's office if you have questions on that. I don't think anything will come to that. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that often in any class, much less mine. So, but I do want to make sure we know who the contact people are. As far as the semester goes, we are going to start out strong with chapters 1 and 2 lecture. It's primarily chapter 1. Chapter 2 is kind of an afterthought. We'll have a few things that we'll talk about in chapter 2. And then we're going to do the first part of chapter 3 on Friday. That will be the due day of our first assignment. And so I want to make a quick note of that, because I'm sure that there's probably a few people in here who have not got their book yet, which is fine. If you have not got your book yet and you don't think you will have it by Friday, I actually have posted a document with the questions that we're going to be covering in chapters 1 and 2. You do not need anything other than my lecture to be able to answer those questions. Well, obviously those are the questions themselves. Okay. By the time that we're going to be doing the chapter 3 stuff, which will be next Friday, you will be expected to have the book by then. Okay. So keep in mind. Also, the idea assignment the first idea assignment is due on Friday. So there's technically 2 assignments due. Again, the idea assignment is optional, though if you're really serious about doing well, I would take optional as being required in this case. And that's all posted on Brightspace right now. So you have the ability to do that. So everything that you need to complete the first few assignments is available, and it's going to be due on Friday. Yeah, and then we'll be going off to our regular schedule from that point moving forward. We do not have class on Monday, by the way, but I'm sure that you're already probably aware of that. So that is kind of accounted for in the schedule. Any questions? Anything that I covered anything that I covered way too fast and need me to repeat in a slower voice? All right. Well, we will cover my favorite chapter, chapter 1, and then chapter 2 on Wednesday. I will see you all then. One combined fund.
Go back.